All right, hey everybody. We didn't have a video up yesterday. That's because I was taking the day off, so I just didn't record one while I was away. I was out of town for a little bit. But we are back today, and we're starting a new week in Roots, a new section in Roots. Actually, we're going to talk about the law now. This is all about how God's people, how Israel was instructed to live. And so, the very first week that we're going to spend in this, we're going to talk about the two great commandments according to Jesus. Jesus said that all of the Bible, all of the law and the prophets, that is the Old Testament to us, hangs on two commandments, and that is that we should love God and that we should love our neighbor. And so the readings for today actually start in the Old Testament, sort of where those commandments come from. And so we look in two different places. We're looking in Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 8, and Leviticus 19, 17 through 18. If I could just read a short portion of each of those to you, I'd like to do that. It says right here in Deuteronomy 6, verse 5, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You think about that. It's talking about the totality of what you are, like with the heart, the soul, the strength. Like, what does all that mean? But what the idea, what it's getting at, is with everything that you are, in your innermost thoughts, in the way that you live, with the possessions that you have, everything that you have is everything that you do is to be done out of love for who God is. The next great commandment comes from Leviticus chapter 19. If you look at verses 17 and 18, it says, "Don't hate a fellow Israelite in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly so you will not share in their guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Now, if I can just kind of zoom out for a second and think about those things, what strikes me about these is how concerned God is with our hearts, with what we love. That's not necessarily something that we think about, because we think about, okay, what do I do? But God looks deeper than just what we do, into what we care about, into what we love, into what we think about, into how we even feel. You might say, well, I'm not responsible for how I feel, because I can't control how I feel on a given day. And to an extent, that's true, but to an extent, it's actually not. You do have control over what you love. For example, like in my relationship with my wife, there are things that I can do that cultivate a love for her in my heart. I do that by spending time with her, by talking to her, by doing those sorts of things. That makes me love her more. If I ignore her, if I neglect her, if I don't talk to her, if I spend all day thinking about other things, then that might take away from the love that I have for her. So in the same way, we can control, in a sense, how we do feel, how we do love God and love people based on what we do. In Deuteronomy 6, there's all this stuff written there about how you're supposed to take the commands of God, you're supposed to talk about them, you're supposed to think about them, you're supposed to write them down and put them all around you. You're supposed to surround yourself with the Word of God, so that you love Him and so that you honor Him. In Leviticus 19, and what we just read about your neighbor, it's saying, look, if you've got a problem with your neighbor, don't hold it in your heart. Don't hold a grudge against them or look for a chance to get back, but talk about it with them to their face so that you can love them properly. Because if you're harboring all this ill will, if you're harboring this grudge in your heart, then you can't love your neighbor like you're supposed to love them. And so there are things that you can do. We have to read the Bible and understand sort of its wisdom and what it has to say to us so that we can do that well. But what it's all getting down to, and what the main goal is that we would love God and that we would love each other. Those are the two commandments out of which everything else flows. Everything that we're trying to do as believers revolves around loving God and loving other people. If what we're doing does not make us love God more, if what we're doing does not make us love our neighbor more, then really, as a spiritual exercise, it's really not helping us. What we have to be focused on, what we have to be doing, is trying to cultivate a genuine love for God and for people.